Why has this NBA offseason been so boring? Hey, how's it going everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about this NBA offseason and why it's been so boring. Like, there hasn't been any moves, and especially when you compare it to past seasons, there hasn't been a lot of trade movement and just a lot of signings in general, but I think there's a reason why. Before we look at this offseason, let's move back a bit and look at the past offseason and the types of moves that have happened. So we're going to be looking at the last 3 offseasons starting in 2021. In the offseason of 2021, Aaron Gordon was traded to the Nuggets, Norman Powell was traded to your Portland Trail Blazers for Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood, and the big trade of the summer was James Harden being traded to the Nets. Aaron Gordon, of course, going to the Nuggets eventually led to them winning a championship in 2023. Norm really wasn't too much for your Blazers. He ended up being traded later on, essentially as a salary dump. And then James Harden really didn't last on the Nets, obviously, as you all know. He only lasted there for about half of a season. But then zoom ahead to the 2022 offseason where the Cleveland Cavaliers traded for Donovan Mitchell. The Utah Jazz decided to blow it up, and so they ended up also trading Rudy Gobert to the Timberwolves, which was a key part in them almost making it to the NBA Finals this year. And then some smaller trades happened, like the Celtics trading for Malcolm Brogdon, or the Hawks trading for DeJounte Murray. But the big one, of course, for the Blazers was trading for Jeremy Grant. The Blazers ended up being able to get Jeremy Grant for a late first-round pick from Milwaukee, and they were able to absorb Jeremy Grant's contract into the trade exception that they made from their Norman Powell and Robert Covington trade. So I guess dumping Norman Powell's contract really wasn't all that bad. But just those 2 seasons, you see a lot more star movement and trades than you have this season. And then last year in 2023, of course, was a huge offseason, especially for Blazers fans, as the whole Damian Lillard saga was happening. Damian Lillard requested a trade out of Portland and ended up being traded in a 3-team deal to Milwaukee, where the Blazers got Jrue Holiday, Toumani Camara, and DeAndre Ayton. Of course, Jrue Holiday was later moved to the Boston Celtics for Robert Williams and Malcolm Brogdon in the first-round pick. Now, of course, Toumani Camara has been a great piece for the Blazers in his rookie season, but that trade kind of was the news report of all of last summer. Every team, every reporter, everyone was talking about it, and it was just a matter of when it was going to happen. But even aside from Dame, the Warriors ended up trading for Chris Paul, the Rockets signed Dylan Brooks and Fred VanVleet, Kristaps Porzingis got traded to Boston, and I believe that Boston ultimately trading for Jrue Holiday and Porzingis ended up leading to them winning the championship this year. But then there was another big trade where Bradley Beal got traded to the Phoenix Suns, forming one of the most expensive but also talented teams the NBA has seen in a long time. And then there was a handful of other small trades. But now that's where we get to the current 2024 NBA offseason. Now, of course, trades can still happen, as Dame was traded at the end of September last year. And so I'm not saying the offseason is over by any means, but I do think if a guy like Jeremy Grant or any of these bigger names are going to be traded, it probably would have happened already. As again, not many trades happened in September, but obviously you never know. But that's not to say that nothing has happened so far, so let's recap the 2024 offseason as well. So far, the Clippers have traded for a washed and old Russell Westbrook, the Kings got DeMar DeRozan, Pelicans traded for DeJounte Murray, Klay Thompson was traded to the Mavericks, Mikal Bridges was traded to the Knicks for a package like no other, and in my opinion, the biggest and overall best trade of the offseason was the Portland Trail Blazers trading with the Washington Wizards for none other than Deni Avdija. And then there's been a few smaller trades that have happened. And now some of those names like Russell Westbrook and DeMar DeRozan might sound like big trades, but even if you include Klay Thompson, they really don't do much for the teams, as all 3 of those guys are way past their prime and aren't really going to have an impact on their new team quite like they did in their primes on their past teams. DeMar DeRozan isn't going to be the same guy he was in Toronto. Klay Thompson obviously isn't going to be the guy he was when he was playing with Steph Curry in 2017, and Russell Westbrook is not going to be the same guy that we saw in OKC or the Houston Rockets. And obviously the story of the summer, in my opinion, has definitely been the Klay Thompson trade, but I think a lot of that wasn't as much due to his talent and the impact he's going to have, but just his longevity on the Warriors and how obviously he had never played for another team before. And so similar to Dame being traded, it's a lot bigger of a deal considering how long they were on their past team for. And now as a Blazers fan, trading for Deni Avdija was such a great move. I won't talk too much on it, as I've made a couple videos before speaking on Deni Avdija and what I think of that trade. But in summary, I think it was a great trade for the Blazers. A little bit expensive. I'm a little bit shocked that the Blazers were the one to pay that price of 2 first-round picks for him. But overall, I think he was the perfect acquisition for Portland, and I'm excited to see how good he is this year. Comment below and let me know your thoughts on Deni Avdija. And so all that to say, why has this NBA offseason been so lackluster and boring compared to the past ones? And why does it seem like a lot less trades and moves and signings are happening? Well, the answer, the CBA. or the collective bargaining agreement. The NBA introduced restrictions in the 2023 CBA agreement that are making it difficult for high-spending teams to acquire all-star level talent in the summer of 2024 and beyond. The NBA introduced 2 new aprons to the CBA. Teams over the first apron are not allowed to use pre-existing trade exceptions and also cannot take back additional salary in a trade. And then the restrictions for teams over the second apron increase even more, and this includes the inability to aggregate contracts sent out and trade cash in a deal. And all of the same rules for the first apron also apply for teams in the second apron, and that started on July 1st of this year. And one important detail to note is that teams that are currently below both aprons are allowed to take back more money, aggregate contracts, send out cash, and use pre-existing trade exceptions in a deal. However, any team that used any of those 4 prior things I just mentioned before July 1st of this year, for example, before the NBA draft, then those teams would trigger either the first or second apron restrictions for this upcoming season. And so a lot of teams are pretty hesitant to go out and make a big trade because they're worried that they would end up entering one of these aprons. This means that the NBA is making it harder for teams to make moves when they're above these aprons, and ideally incentivize more expensive teams like the Suns or the Celtics to either shed salary in a trade or trade away talent, which would overall help even out the talent amongst the NBA. And it would just overall make it harder for super teams to be made. And honestly, I'm fine with this idea, but it makes teams less willing to bring back more money if it means pushing them into the first apron, and so I understand why teams are more hesitant. But in theory, I understand why the NBA has put these practices into place, and I feel like it might just take a couple years for teams to get used to this. I mentioned before that all of these went into effect on July 1st of this summer, and on July 1st there were 18 total teams, so more than half the NBA that was affected by these new rules. 6 of them that were in the second apron and 12 that were in the first. Now my guess is that as teams figure out the CBA, things will kind of fix themselves out, and we'll see a lot more moves happen at the upcoming trade deadline or next offseason once these teams have a full year to understand it under their belt. But hey, comment below, let me know your thoughts on the new CBA, and am I right? Do you think that's why this NBA offseason has been so boring, or is there something I'm missing? I know this is a little bit different than my normal typical Trailblazers content, but hey, there's not a lot going around in the Trailblazers world right now, so I had to make something. I appreciate you guys for sticking around and watching the video. Make sure to subscribe for more NBA and basketball content, and don't forget to like the video on your way out of here. It really helps push my videos out to more people and helps me grow the channel, so if you appreciate what I'm doing here, liking the video is the best way to help support it. I hope you guys have a blessed rest of your day, and until next time, I'll see you later.